My name is Voraka-7, Senior Field Observer of the Galactic Expansion Authority, and I am filing this report from what I can only describe as a moving metal coffin hurtling through a frozen wasteland that the humans call Chicago in February. I want to state for the official record that nobody warned us. Nobody. Not one briefing. Not one footnote in the entire 4000-page invasion manual. Not even a casual mention at the pre-mission banquet where General Sketh gave his famous 3-hour speech about the glorious future of our empire. 3 hours, and not a single word about what was waiting for us here. Let me go back to the beginning. The Galactic Expansion Authority had been watching Earth for 60 of their years. 60 years of passive observation, long-range scans, behavioral analysis, atmospheric readings, the usual preparation before a Category 4 planetary acquisition. Our analysts ran the numbers. They concluded unanimously, with full committee approval, that Earth was, quote, a soft target with manageable indigenous resistance. Manageable. I keep hearing that word in my mind and I want to throw something. Our invasion fleet arrived in a tight formation above the northern hemisphere on what the humans call a Tuesday. We chose Tuesday because our cultural analysts said Tuesday was the humans' weakest day emotionally. Apparently they dislike it very much. We thought this gave us a psychological advantage. It did not. The moment our lead ship, the dominant will of the Sketh Empire, broke through the upper atmosphere, we received our first surprise. The outer hull temperature spiked to levels that would have vaporized a standard Skethian combat vessel. It did not vaporize us, but only because we had thought to install heat shielding rated for star proximity. Even so, the hull groaned. Our chief engineer, Porro, looked at his readings and said, very quietly, "That is not normal friction." He was right. It was not. We later learned that Earth's atmosphere is a violent, layered assault on anything trying to pass through it. The humans call this re-entry. They treat it as routine. They send fragile metal capsules through it regularly, sometimes with living creatures inside, and act surprised when visitors are alarmed by this. One of the human engineers we later captured, a compact woman named Dava with arms covered in complicated drawings, laughed for 4 minutes straight when we explained our hull readings to her. 4 minutes. We had not yet landed. The fleet touched down across 3 continents, as planned. The northern landing, my landing, brought us to a flat region the humans call a prairie. The scan data had described it as open terrain, ideal for force deployment. The terrain was indeed open. What the scans had failed to communicate was that open terrain in this part of the planet, in this particular season, meant a wall of horizontal frozen air moving at speeds that my suit sensors refused to believe were accurate. I stepped off the boarding ramp. The cold hit me like a physical object, not the gentle cold of climate-controlled ship quarters. This was aggressive cold, purposeful cold. Cold that had an agenda. My environmental suit is rated for -40 degrees. The readout on the visor showed -43, with something called a wind chill factor that my translation software initially rendered as cruelty coefficient. I believe that was accurate. Sergeant Dolk, my second in command, stepped down behind me, took one breath of outside air through his helmet filters, and immediately requested emergency reassignment to a desk position. I denied the request. We had 400 soldiers to deploy and a city to reach. The city was visible on the horizon. According to our maps, it was 11 of their kilometers away. A simple march. We were equipped with standard-issue combat boots rated for temperature extremes, designed by our best military gear engineers, tested extensively in Skethian climate simulations. Our boots were not rated for what the humans call black ice. The first 40 meters of our advance looked like a very long, very expensive comedy performance. Fully armored, heavily armed, elite soldiers of the Galactic Expansion Authority sliding, stumbling, grabbing at each other, falling in connected groups like a chain reaction of catastrophic failure. Lieutenant Mav fell and took down 3 soldiers with him. Private Gurm sat down hard, spun a full rotation on the ice sheet and came to rest facing the direction we had come from, looking philosophical about it. I do not have the personal dignity to describe my own fall in detail. We reached the outskirts of the city after 2 hours, a march that should have taken 30 minutes. When we entered the first street, we found it empty, too empty. I have read enough military history to be suspicious of empty streets. Empty streets mean the locals know something you do not. our intelligence had reported that this city contained millions of humans. They were not on the streets. We swept the area on sensors. They were inside, all of them, inside their buildings, going about their day, apparently completely unbothered by the presence of an alien invasion fleet visible from the ground. My cultural analyst, a thin-shouldered officer named Resek, who had spent 5 years studying human behavior patterns, stared at his sensor data with an expression I had never seen on his face before. "They know we are here," he said. "Obviously," I said. "We landed 4 capital ships in their hemisphere. They are watching us on their communication screens," he said. "The coverage is extensive." "Good." Fear spreads quickly through broadcast channels. Resek turned his screen toward me. On it was a human broadcast. Humans sitting at desks, talking rapidly, smiling. Behind them, footage of our ships. The visual in the corner of their screen showed an excited-looking human with large gestures and the word "breaking" written above him in large letters. Resek had translated the audio. According to the translation, the broadcast human was saying, and I want to quote this precisely, "Folks, I've got to tell you, this is absolutely wild. We've got confirmed alien contact, confirmed landing, and I'm already seeing the memes. These are incredible. We'll show you those in just a moment." "Resek," I said. "Sir, what is a meme?" He showed me. I requested a 10-minute pause in the advance. The cold continued to be a problem. 2 of our soldiers developed something our medical officer identified as mild frostbite, which sounds minor until you understand that their species evolved on a world where the lowest natural temperature is comparable to what the humans call a warm spring day. Our medical team had not packed for this. Our inventory included 17 types of trauma dressing, 6 varieties of antitoxin compound, advanced surgical repair tools, and exactly 0 pairs of thermal gloves. Meanwhile, the humans we began to encounter in the streets were wearing remarkable garments, heavy layered coverings, enormous padded shells, complex foot wrappings, face masks, head coverings with attached neck sections. They walked through the same air that was currently damaging our soldiers with the casual ease of people doing something completely unremarkable. One human walked past our forward unit with a small animal on a cord, a creature with fur and an expression of pure contempt for the temperature, and neither the human nor the animal so much as paused to examine our formation. Private Gurm watched this human walk past. "They are not afraid," he said. "They are in shock," I told him. "Sir," said Resek, "the human has just taken out a small device, pointed it at us, and appears to be taking documentary images while also eating something." The something was a circular bread product containing hot liquid cheese and meat, steaming in the cold air. The smell reached us through our helmet filters. It was remarkable. This is not relevant to the military report, but I want it in the record. We made first formal contact at 1400 hours, local time. The humans sent 3 representatives to meet us at the edge of what they called a public park. The park was covered in snow. The representatives were wearing official-looking garments with more layers underneath. One of them was drinking something hot from a container with a human expression printed on it that our analysts had determined meant either happiness or defiant resilience. The translation on the container said, "Mondays, am I right?" The lead representative was a short human named Paz, with grey in her hair, and the kind of calm expression that I associate in my own species with either extreme wisdom or complete psychological damage. She looked at our formation of 400 armed soldiers and said, "Through the translation device we projected between us, you picked a real week for this. We are representatives of the Sketh Empire," I announced. "We have come to inform this world of its acquisition." "Uh-huh," said Paz. "Your planet is now under the authority of the Galactic Expansion Authority. Resistance is inadvisable." Paz looked at my soldiers. Several of them were quietly stamping their feet to maintain circulation. One was blowing on his hands, which does nothing through sealed combat gloves but apparently provides psychological comfort. "Is your gear rated for this weather?" she asked. "Our equipment is the finest military technology in the known galaxy," I said. "Yeah," said Paz, looking at Private Gurm, who was now standing on one foot for reasons I refused to investigate. "About that." Paz invited us inside. "I want to be clear about what happened there, because our mission debrief is going to require an explanation, and we accepted hospitality from the target population because it was very cold, is not the kind of sentence that looks good in an official report. But the temperature had dropped another 4 degrees in the last hour. Private Gurm had completely stopped making sense, and Sergeant Dolk had quietly shown me that the seal on his left boot had cracked, which meant his left foot was now on a personal, private adventure of its own. We went inside. The building was warm, remarkably, aggressively, almost offensively warm. Our suits registered the temperature change, and several soldiers made sounds that are not appropriate to describe in a military document. Dolk sat down in a chair that a human offered him, looked at the ceiling for a long moment, and said nothing. I understood. Paz brought us something hot in containers. Our cultural analyst Rezek identified it as a brewed liquid made from ground plant seeds, consumed by humans in quantities that suggest either deep dependency or profound ritual significance. Probably both. It smelled extraordinary. We were of course unable to drink it through our sealed helmets, which Paz found gently amusing and did not say anything about, which was somehow worse. So, she said, settling into a chair across from me with the energy of someone who had done difficult conversations before and did not find them frightening. What exactly is the plan? The plan, I said, is planetary acquisition, standard procedure. We announce authority, establish administrative control, begin resource assessment, and integrate your world into the Empire's supply network within 18 months. 18 months, Paz repeated. It is an aggressive timeline, I acknowledged, but our analysts rated Earth as Category 4, manageable. Paz looked at me for a moment. Then she looked at the window, where snow was now falling with the focused intensity of something that had a grudge. Have your analysts, she said carefully, done a seasonal breakdown? I contacted our analysis team on the fleet. The seasonal breakdown took 40 minutes. When it came back, I read it 3 times. Then I called Senior Analyst Breck directly, which I had not done since the engine fire incident of 2 years ago. Breck, I said, your seasonal data. Yes, sir. It says this region currently has the mildest weather of the 4 annual cycles. Silence. Breck. Yes, sir, that is technically correct. I looked at Sergeant Dolk's foot, which was now wrapped in what appeared to be a curtain that one of the human staff members had provided out of what seemed to be genuine concern. I looked at Private Gurm, who was sitting very still with the expression of a soldier who has made peace with his choices. I thought about the 40 meters of black ice, the cruelty coefficient wind, the horizontal air. Breck, I said, what does this planet look like in its worst weather cycle? Another silence. Longer this time. Sir, Breck said, you know how we described Earth as Category 4? Yes, we may have made a rounding error. Paz, to her credit, did not appear to enjoy our distress. She explained the seasons with the patience of someone who had accepted long ago that the planet she lived on was not operating in anyone's best interest, including her own. She described the summer, which sounded reasonable, until she mentioned that certain regions routinely reached temperatures that would require us to switch to our full thermal protection gear, normally reserved for proximity to cooling volcanic flows. She described something called a heat dome. She described humidity levels in coastal regions that our atmospheric processes would struggle with. She described a meteorological event called a derecho, with the same casual tone one might use to describe routine local wildlife. Also, she said, there's tornado season. Define tornado, said Rezek, who had been taking notes. Paz defined tornado. Rezek stopped taking notes and simply stared at the table. And hurricanes, Paz continued. How large? I said. The big ones cover an area roughly the size of your landing zone, she said, nodding toward the window. Sometimes bigger. They last for weeks. Wind speeds that would overturn your ground vehicles. She paused. We name them. Give them a list of names at the start of the season. Work through alphabetically. Some years we run out of names. I processed this. You run out of names, I repeated. For the hurricanes, yes, it happens. How often does it happen? Paz tilted her head. More than it used to. The Southern Landing Team checked in at 1700 hours with news from their front that I can only describe as educational. Commander Veth had landed his forces in a region the humans call a jungle. Our intelligence had described it as dense vegetation zone with elevated moisture content. This was accurate in the way that describing a star as a warm ball is accurate. Technically correct. Missing significant texture. Veth's report was delivered in a voice that had lost some of its early confidence. The vegetation, he explained, did not simply exist in their path. It actively participated in obstructing them. plants with thorns the length of a standard combat blade, trees with root systems that extended across the ground in configurations that caught boots with what he described as suspicious consistency. Insects. Veth spent 3 full sentences on the insects alone, and none of those sentences were calm. One species, he said, was the size of a small communication device, flew erratically, and produced a sound that disrupted his soldiers' neural focus. Another species bit, another species bit, and then the bite continued to be relevant for 6 to 8 hours afterward. Veth, I said, what is your current status? We are, he said, with deliberate control, in a structure the locals call a visitor center. A human named Beto gave us insect repellent and showed us how to check ourselves for something called a tick, which I am going to ask you never to have described to you because some things cannot be unknown. Are your soldiers combat ready? A pause. Beto is teaching 3 of them how to identify which plants are dangerous to touch, Veth said. So, in progress. The Eastern landing team, under Commander Pree, had different news. They had landed near a coastal city in a region of significant elevation. The humans there had, according to Pree, received them with extraordinary calm, polite, organized. The local officials had set up what appeared to be a formal welcoming structure within hours of landing. I was suspicious immediately. Pree assured me the humans were cooperative. They were showing our teams around the city, offering explanations of local infrastructure, being, in Pree's word, hospitable. Pree, I said, why are they being hospitable? They seem to think, Pree said slowly, that we are here for a cultural exchange program. Someone on their communication network suggested it 2 hours ago and it spread very quickly. We are not here for a cultural exchange program. I am aware, sir. However, 3 of my soldiers are currently in a cooking demonstration, and one of them, Lieutenant Haro, appears to be genuinely invested in learning the local bread recipe. I am not certain he will come back out. I asked Pree to remind his soldiers we were an invasion force. I did, sir. Haro said the bread takes 40 minutes to prove and he would rejoin the invasion after that. Back in the warm building, Paz had moved on to geology. I had not asked about geology. Paz had decided I needed to know about geology. The planet, she explained, sitting with her legs crossed and her hot drink container balanced on her knee, was geologically active in ways that our scan data had described as background seismic variation. She described tectonic plates. She described fault lines. She drew a quick diagram on a piece of paper showing me where the major fault systems ran and then, without any particular emotional emphasis, told me that the western coast of the primary landmass was several centuries overdue for a significant event that seismologists referred to by a name that translated directly in our language as the one that finishes things. Overdue, I said. Well, geology doesn't really do schedules, she said. Could be tomorrow, could be 100 years. The mountain range in the northwest has a volcano that's technically active. So does a large section of one of the smaller land masses. Oh, and there's one underwater off the coast of the Central Ocean that the researchers get very quiet about at conferences. Why do they get quiet? Paz smiled. It was not a threatening smile. It was a smile that had simply been through a lot. Because when they run the projections, she said, they all get the same number, and nobody likes the number. I looked at Resek. Resek had closed his notepad. The meeting of senior commanders took place aboard the Dominant Will at 2100 hours. Veth was there remotely, smelling faintly of insect repellent. Pree was there with a small piece of bread wrapped in cloth that Lieutenant Haro had apparently sent along as a gesture of goodwill, which I found both touching and deeply concerning. We reviewed the full planetary threat assessment, which analyst Breck had now revised to a document 3 times the length of the original invasion plan. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanic systems, the frozen assault in the north, the biological warfare of the southern jungles, the hidden geological event with the number nobody liked, seasonal temperature swings that could destroy our equipment in both directions, a layer of the atmosphere entirely separate from the weather, that our analysts now described as a radiation management system the planet runs entirely on its own, and which is apparently somewhat unstable. Somewhat unstable, said Commander Veth. I is not Pushmore. Their scientists are worried about it, said Breck. They have been worried about it for decades. They keep publishing reports. The reports keep getting larger. What do the reports say? Breck was quiet. Breck, the reports say that the instability is in part a result of what the humans have been doing to their own planet for the last 2 centuries, Breck said, and that the consequences are still arriving, and that the humans know this and continue to do it anyway. The room was silent. Dolk, whose foot was now in a proper medical wrap courtesy of the ship's medic, looked at the ceiling. They know, he said quietly, that they are damaging the system that keeps them alive. Yes, and they keep doing it. Yes, another silence. A longer one. Sir, said Dolk, turning to me, I think I understand now why their military is not scared of us. I asked him to elaborate. He looked out the viewport at the dark planet below, streaked with weather systems visible even from orbit, dotted with volcanic glow along certain coastlines, wrapped in a thin shell of atmosphere doing its best. Because, he said, compared to what they are already dealing with, we are not the scary part. I filed the revised category assessment with Central Command the following morning. I changed Earth from Category 4 to Category 9, which is a classification we had previously only used for active star systems. I also submitted a secondary report, personal observations, not official doctrine. In it I described Paz, who had walked us back to our ships at dawn through the snow, bundled in 4 layers carrying her hot drink, pointing out ice patches so our soldiers would not fall again. I described Lieutenant Haro, who had learned to bake bread in the middle of an invasion and did not seem to see a contradiction there. I described Dava the engineer, who had laughed for 4 minutes at our hull readings, and then calmly and precisely explained exactly how to improve our atmospheric entry shielding without being asked, because apparently that was just what she did. I described a species that had been in a continuous, escalating conflict with their own planet for their entire history, losing frequently, adapting constantly, and had somehow looked at all of it, every hurricane and fault line and rising temperature and number nobody liked, and decided to stay. Not because they had no choice, because this was home. And somewhere in the back of my report, in a section I marked as informal commentary, I wrote one sentence that I think summarizes the Earth assessment better than any data our analysts produced. We came to take their planet. We did not understand that the planet was already in a fight, and they were already winning. The fleet departed on a Friday. Paz came to watch us go. She waved. We waved back. Even Dolk, with the wrapped foot,